Hello, welcome to From Caracas. In this opportunity, we'll be talking to David Denny from Barbados, who is the Secretary General of the Caribbean Movement for Peace. He's also a Pan-Africanist and a solidarity activist. Welcome, David.
Welcome, and happy to be here with you.
Nice to have you here in From Caracas.
Right.
So I want to ask you, what does the Caribbean mean politically, geographically, and spiritually?
Well, the Caribbean is made up of many countries in our region with different languages. You have the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, you have the Dutch-speaking Caribbean, you have the English-speaking Caribbean, and you have the French-speaking Caribbean in our region. One of the main organizations in the Caribbean region is CARICOM, intergovernmental agency, and this agency allows the governments of the region to meet annually. It also allows ministers within the region to meet to discuss issues that affect Caribbean people and to look at solutions that will help us to move our region forward. So CARICOM is an important CARICOM is an important organization within our region. You have the Caribbean Development Bank within the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
You also have non-governmental institutions at the level of Pan-Africanism. You know, you have the Caribbean Pan-Africanist Network. You also have the Pan-African Federalist movement within the region that is also doing some very good work in relation to strengthening Pan-Africanism in the region. We also have now a Caribbean peace movement,
Mm-hmm.
a peace institution that is helping us to educate the people of Barbados about some of the issues that are affecting not only Caribbean people, but people in general as it relates to
Mm-hmm.
peace. So the Caribbean region is a very, powerful region in today's world, and therefore we can, move our countries forward in terms of looking at development for our people.
But by traditions, by cultural, what is the Caribbean? What does it mean for the world?
Well, as I mentioned to you, there are different languages in the Caribbean.
But beside the languages,
but there are also different cultures within the region. You have the Indian community, you have the African community, you have the European community in the Caribbean, you have the Chinese community in the Caribbean. But the Caribbean, have many different cultures in our region. But when it comes now to a Barbadian speaking, I can speak directly, about the Barbadian culture. Our culture have a mixture of European as well as African culture coming from Barbados. We have in the area the arts, calypso form, most of our culture in terms of music. We have our own dance. Then Barbadian is known for cricket, which is the national sports
Mm-hmm.
of Barbados, and it's also a popular sport within the English-speaking Caribbean region.
You are well known in Barbados and in the Caribbean because of your political activism in and defense of Pan-Africanism,
Mm-hmm.
and giving people to acknowledge what Pan-Africanism is. So how is that connected to the Caribbean and what they call the sixth region?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because Africa, the African Union, have developed the diaspora
Mm-hmm.
as the sixth region, and the Caribbean form part of the sixth region for the African diaspora. Pan-Africanism, have helped us in many areas, in our region. this present moment, you know, we as Pan-Africanists have been able to work together in regional institutions. There are times when we will celebrate dates that relates to Africa or to African people. For instance, last month was Black History Month, and in Barbados we had a major program within the school system where all of the primary and secondary schools used that opportunity to celebrate Black History Month. In May 25th, we will be celebrating African Liberation Day. And then going into August 1st, we will be looking at Emancipation Day. It's a day that all of the Caribbean countries would normally recognize and celebrate, Emancipation Day. But Pan-Africanism have done a lot for us in the region. And as an activist, I'm not only, a Pan-Africanist, but I'm also a socialist, and I have been active within the labor movement, in the trade union movement in Barbados. I have also been active in the peace movement in the region, also other Caribbean institutions like the Caribbean Movement for Peace and Integration, as an activist. And I have developed a very good working relationship with many of the Caribbean activists who today are working towards, a program, a solidarity program with the government and people of Venezuela.
Now that you talk about solidarity, and you mentioned Venezuela, you are part of the Solidarity Committee, Friends of Venezuela.
Yeah.
In these days that we are seeing that Venezuela is being threatened with an aggression from the U.S., how do you think this communication strategy to show that the country is falling down, and you are here, though, what's your experience? What have you seen? What are you bringing back home, and you're going to tell them, to your colleagues there?
Well, first I would like to say that I'm very, very happy to be in Venezuela to see for myself, because the international media, BBC, CNN, AP, writers, have been painting a picture that is very negative about Venezuela. And the truth is that people need to come to Venezuela to see for themselves. Because if you open up the newspapers in the region, or you listen, you will believe that the people in Venezuela are suffering and that they are hungry and that they are starving. But when you come to Venezuela and you see the conditions, it's totally different from what the international media is saying about Venezuela. Because I have had the opportunity to travel on the public transport, and while I was traveling on the public transport, I was able to meet people, I was able to see people, I was able to see the conditions in Venezuela. The schools are open in Venezuela, the hospitals are open in Venezuela, the churches is open, they're open in Venezuela. Venezuela is celebrating, have its carnival and is celebrating. So from the time I arrived in Venezuela, all I see is people who are happy, and they're doing everything to make sure that they satisfy their own needs. The Venezuelan supermarket have groceries on the shelves. The department stores have goods on the shelves. If you go to the market, you will see that there are vegetables and fruits, there. So that the picture that I saw in Barbados, when I was in Barbados about Venezuela, is totally different from what I'm seeing now in Venezuela. The conditions are totally different. I think that the international media, is trying to create the conditions to make Caribbean people believe that Venezuelan people are suffering, so as to create the conditions for an invasion in Venezuela. But I think that will not happen. That idea will not work because the Venezuelan people are strong and they're ready to defend their revolution. If I'm speaking to the, if I'm speaking to the people here in Venezuela, you can see that the Venezuelan people are ready to defend their revolution. And we in the Caribbean, in the solidarity movements, we are going to continue to defend the people of Venezuela, because Venezuela plays a very important role within the Americas. When you look back at the time with President Hugo Chavez, President Chavez and President Lula, they did some very, very good work when they fought a battle against our region becoming the free trade areas of the Americas.
Exactly.
And the free trade areas of the Americas would have created the condition for the privatization of our resources, the privatization of our health services and education. And they create a space for Caribbean nation and for Caribbean people. And then Venezuela then moved, to a higher level where it creates the conditions for the Petro-Caribbean Agreement that benefited many Eastern Caribbean countries, poor nations.
I want to reach that, but I have two questions.
No problem.
Before.
No problem. No problem.
One, because you referred about what Caribbean countries people in the Caribbean thought about what was going on in Venezuela. And related to that, I wanted to ask you, do you think that the Caribbean countries, CARICOM as the organization that combines all those Caribbean nations, it's important that they assume this condemn to the impose of the sanctions to Venezuela, imposition of sanctions to Venezuela, and that they are agreeing and they are willing to facilitate a dialogue space for Venezuela?
Yeah. In fact, CARICOM position is a correct position. One, that our region should remain a zone of peace. Two, that the Venezuelan people should be respected and the Venezuelan people should be allowed to determine their direction, their leadership, and who should continue to govern the Venezuelan people. That's why the solidarity movements in the region are very supportive of CARICOM's position, and CARICOM have been taking a very, very, very progressive position that also respects the rights of the people of the Caribbean, because this is not only a threat against Venezuela, it's also a threat against the entire Caribbean region. And I think what CARICOM is doing is that they're defending the Caribbean region, and they're defending Venezuela, and they're defending the poor and powerless people within our region. Because this battle is only about robbing the people of Venezuela from its natural resources. And Venezuela have been sharing its resources with Caribbean people and helping Caribbean people in terms of development and in terms of health services, because every time that there's a disaster in our region, one of the first countries that turn up on our doorsteps to help is Venezuela and Cuba.
Exactly. And regarding those natural resources, as you were telling me before, because Venezuela have been sharing for years its natural resources with the Caribbean and with the rest of Latin American countries. With the initiative specifically for the Caribbean with Petro-Caribe, specifically in Barbados, how has that help have been seen?
Well, we are not Barbados is not part of the Petro-Caribbean Agreement. But there's a time when Barbados was sending Barbadian people to Cuba for eye care. And this program, as you know, is a program that was developed and supported by President Hugo Chavez and President Fidel Castro to help Caribbean people in relation to eye care. So Barbados have benefited from that process, even though that we are not members of the Petro-Caribbean Agreement. Then Barbadian people, have a very good working relationship with the Embassy of Venezuela in Barbados, and the Embassy of Venezuela in Barbados have a program where today they're teaching Barbadian people Spanish, and in that grouping you have public workers, you have private sector workers, you have journalists, you have people working in the hospitality industry, nurses, and they have even extended that program to one of the leading trade unions in Barbados, where they ran a program at the National Union of Public Workers to help working people so that they can study Spanish, so that they can have a better understanding of the language, so that they can use it for the development of Barbados.
How then that collaboration, that how can you say it, that sharing of knowledge, of experiences have enriched the people from the Caribbean, but also from the rest of Latin America? How has that brotherhood gotten stronger?
Yeah, well, what I can tell you today at this present moment, because of what is happening, Caribbean people and Venezuelan people and Latin American people are becoming, they're automatically coming closer, and they're understanding the real enemies within our region. Now, the people of the United States of America are not our enemies, okay? Because there are poor people in the United States of America too who are struggling and who are fighting. And Venezuela have extended its arms in terms of helping poor people in the United States of America, okay? So that this really is a battle in the Americas where the rich want to control all of the resources for the rich, and the poor are defending themselves so that they can be part of any economic program, that they can be part of any social program that are taking place within our region, and that the resources within this hemisphere belongs to the people and not to one small group in North America, that it belongs to the people of the Americas.
David, I want to ask you some questions specifically about Barbados.
Okay.
Because a year ago, Talasu was in Barbados, and he was reporting the general elections there.
Right, right.
Because it was, and historical elections also, because for the first time, a woman got to the
post of prime minister.
To the post of prime minister, exactly, and also the Barbadian Labourist Party won the 30 seats in the House of Assembly. So, and of course, Mia Mottley became the 8th Prime Minister of Barbados. But in that moment, Barbados was facing a serious, critical situation, economical situation.
Right, right.
How have this month been shown an answer of how the work they've done? How has it been?
Well, first I would like to say that the Prime Minister made a very, very good statement when she won the election. She said that the election was the election was not won by the PLP or by her; it was won by the people. And her statement indicated that it was a people's election, and the people wanted a change, and the people voted for that. So it was a people's election. That's why it was so popular. The other thing is that I must say that the present government have done some very, very, very good things in relation to governing Barbados after the general election. They have created many conditions for many poor people in Barbados because the people of Barbados, were going through some serious economic problems, and there are some changes that are taking place in Barbados, and they are helping the Barbadian economy. And I must say that we are on a higher level, and we are in a better position in today's world, coming out of the general election in Barbados. And I am hoping that the government will remain on that path and that the government will create the conditions for the poor people in Barbados to be able to benefit from this process.
Thank you, David. And one last question. Do you think the Caribbean has the key to maintain balance in Latin America?
Well, I would say the key, but the Caribbean, from what I can see, is prepared to work with Latin American countries. You know, all of the Caribbean countries are they're members of intergovernmental agencies.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are members of ALBA. Some of them have a working relationship with the Petro-Caribbean Agreement.
Mm-hmm.
All of the Caribbean countries have embassies from Cuba, which I think is a proud thing and a very good thing. They also have embassies from Venezuela, which I think is a good thing by Venezuela and Cuba. I think that we in Latin America and the Caribbean need to work together, because the Latin American region is a very, very, very big population, and I think that trade between Latin America and the Caribbean will help Caribbean nations in terms of the movement of services between our region and Latin America will also help the Caribbean region, so that for us, we have to look at new ideas for our region, rather than depending only on trade with Europe and North America. I think we should look at the Latin American region and the African region and the Asian region, so as to create the conditions for small developing nations within the Caribbean region to, to be able to move forward and to develop that, and to be able to use the opportunity to help our people.
The opportunity that the global South give, that the opportunity that the global South offers and gives to the Caribbean and Latin America.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's what we need to do in terms of moving forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the time and opportunity.
That's been David Denny, who is from Barbados. He is Secretary General of the Caribbean Movement for Peace and Integration.
Yeah.
And he's also a Pan-Africanist and a solidarity activist with Venezuela.
And
thank you again. And a socialist. Yeah. Thank you again, David, for being with us.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time.
To be here.
You're welcome.